At the will reading, I sat frozen as my father, Robert Carter, yanked a check worth $99 million straight out of my hands. Without hesitation, he flicked open his silver lighter, pressed the flame to the edge of the paper, and watched as fire devoured it. My mother, Sarah, didn't even blink. Her voice sliced through the air, sharp and triumphant. "This is what you get for cutting us off. Welcome to revenge, Amy. Your support is what keeps us going and allows us to continue telling inspiring stories of justice, healing, and self-worth. Help our channel reach our first 1,000 subscribers by liking and subscribing." Now let's get back to the story. The flames consumed the paper quickly, curling the edges until all that remained was smoke, rising like it was erasing me from existence. Everyone in the room waited for my reaction. They expected me to scream, to cry, to crumble into nothing as my inheritance turned to ash. But I didn't. I didn't even flinch. I simply smiled because I knew something they didn't. What they burned wasn't real. My name is Chloe Carter, granddaughter of billionaire Henry Carter. On that day, my parents believed they had destroyed my future. They thought they had stripped me of everything. But my grandfather had prepared me for this very moment. He had prepared me to face betrayal, to endure fire, and to rise from the ashes, not only with money but with the truth. Earlier that morning, I had walked into the marble lobby of Harper & Associates, the law firm that had served our family for decades. The polished floors gleamed so brightly it almost hurt my eyes. My heels clicked against the stone, each sharp sound reminding me that I wasn't here to beg. I wasn't here to fight for scraps. I was here to witness the truth unfold. The receptionist barely glanced up before pointing me toward the glass doors at the end of the hall. I pushed them open and stepped into the conference room. My mother, Sarah, sat stiffly with her pearl necklace wound tight around her fingers, lips pressed together so firmly I wondered if they might crack. My father, Robert, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a permanent scowl etched into his face. And Jacob, my older brother, lounged casually, sunglasses resting on his head, as though he were simply passing time at a Sunday brunch. None of them acknowledged me. Not a single nod. Not even a glance. At the head of the long mahogany table stood William Harper, the family lawyer. His voice was calm, professional, but his eyes carried a weight that made me sit up straighter. "Miss Carter," he said, "thank you for joining us. We are here today to fulfill the last wishes of your grandfather, Henry Carter." I took the last seat, as I always had, quiet and deliberate. The air smelled of lemon polish and worn leather, a scent that clung to old money and older secrets. My pulse beat in my throat, steady but loud. Mr. Harper unfolded a crisp page and began to read. "To Jacob Carter," he said, "your grandfather leaves the Jackson Hole cabin and his 1959 Gibson guitar." Jacob's smirk faltered for just a moment. "That's it," he muttered. Mr. Harper ignored him and continued. "To Robert and Sarah Carter, his son and daughter-in-law, he leaves the heirloom grandfather clock, his vinyl collection, and a charitable donation of $10,000 made in your names." The silence shattered. Sarah gasped, choking in disbelief. "Excuse me? That's absurd." Robert barked out a harsh laugh. "A joke. This must be a joke." I kept my eyes on the polished table, letting their outrage echo like static in the background. Then Mr. Harper's gaze lifted, meeting mine. His tone slowed, deliberate, as if he wanted each word to cut through the noise. "And to Chloe Carter," he declared. "He leaves his entire financial estate totaling $99 million. For a moment the entire room froze. The words hung in the air like a verdict. For a full second, the room was silent, so quiet I swore I could hear the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights above. Then my father lurched forward, his chair scraping violently against the polished floor. "What?" Robert snapped, his voice raw. "You heard me," William Harper replied firmly. "This was notarized 3 months ago. Henry Carter made his decision deliberately." Sarah's face twisted, veins standing out at her temples. "She hasn't spoken to us in years. She abandoned this family. And now she walks back in here, acting like some martyr and takes everything? This is outrageous." I lifted my chin, meeting her eyes without flinching. I didn't walk back in. I was invited. Jacob gave a low laugh, leaning back in his chair, sunglasses now pushed up on his head. Grandpa just felt sorry for you, Chloe. Poor little Chloe, the granddaughter who could never keep up. Before I could respond, William Harper slid a sealed brown envelope across the table toward me. The wax stamp bore the Carter crest, an image I had seen carved into my grandfather's walking stick countless times. For you, the lawyer said quietly. Henry Carter's last words were clear. She stayed silent and she stayed strong. She was never forgotten. I reached forward, my fingers brushing the envelope just as my father's hand shot across the table. His grip was iron, fueled by desperation and fury. Robert, Mr. Harper barked, his voice sharp, that belongs to Chloe. But my father didn't listen. With a savage motion, he tore the envelope open, his hands shaking but determined. A crisp rectangle slid free. A check for $99 million. He held it up like a weapon, shaking it in the air as if exposing some grand crime. 99 million? This is insanity. His voice cracked too loud, echoing off the walls. This girl doesn't deserve a cent. I stayed rooted in my seat, my fingernails digging half-moons into my palms, watching quietly. Then Sarah snatched the folded letter that had been tucked inside. Her hands trembled as her eyes scanned the words, but the fury on her face hardened into contempt. For the one who stayed silent and stayed strong, she read, her voice dripping with venom. With a bitter laugh, she ripped the letter clean in half. Silent. Strong. She was ungrateful. Always ungrateful. Give that back, I said, my voice low but steady. Oh, listen to her, Sarah mocked, tearing the paper again, then again until it fluttered onto the table in shreds. Calm, collected, like she thinks she's better than us. Jacob smirked from his corner. Guess it finally paid off, Chloe. You've been playing the victim for years. I turned to him, my eyes steady. Guess you'll have to live with a dusty guitar while I walk away with the future. His smirk faltered. Enough, Robert thundered, slamming the check onto the table. He reached into his jacket, pulled out his silver lighter, and flicked it open. The sharp click cracked the silence like a gunshot. Dad? I snapped, rising from my seat. You don't get to buy your way back into this family, he roared, the flame sparking alive, dancing hungrily in the air. You left us long before your grandfather died. Robert, don't you dare! William Harper shouted, stepping forward. But my father had already pressed the fire to the edge of the check. The flame hissed against the edge of the check, curling the paper instantly. Black veins spread like lightning across its surface as fire devoured ink and promise alike. The smell of burning fibers filled the air, acrid and bitter. Sarah leaned back in her chair, folding her arms with a cruel smile. This is what happens when you betray your family, she said, satisfaction dripping from every word. Ash flaked into the crystal tray, falling like dead snow. I didn't move. I didn't speak. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to leap forward, to snatch the check from his hand, to prove that I belonged. But I stayed rooted, my hands curling into fists at my sides. My pulse thundered in my ears, but outwardly I was calm, almost serene. You think fire erases truth? I whispered. Robert slammed the charred remains into the tray, chest heaving, his face red with rage. Now we're even, he spat. His voice was hoarse, as if the anger had scorched his throat. Sarah smirked, shaking her head. You'll never win against us, Chloe. Money can't rewrite the past. You abandoned us when your father was sick. You abandoned us when we needed you most. Jacob chuckled darkly from his seat, watching the ash scatter across the polished table. She's not even fighting back. Look at her, standing there like a statue. Did Grandpa teach you that too? To play weak until you got your payday. I finally lifted my eyes to him, steady and unflinching. No, I said softly. He taught me that silence can cut deeper than screaming. The room went quiet. Not the awkward silence of an argument, but the heavy, living silence that feels like it has weight. Their glares, their sneers, their cruelty, none of it pierced me. Inside, my chest burned hotter than the fire that had consumed the check. Anger, yes. Betrayal, yes. But layered beneath all of it was something else. Triumph, because I knew the truth, what they had burned wasn't real. The check was a decoy, a blank carefully placed by my grandfather Henry Carter, who had known exactly how they would react. He had predicted their greed, their rage, their need to destroy something they couldn't control. And he had given them just that, something to burn that I let them believe they had won. I let them mistake my silence for defeat. But beneath my calm smile, I carried the weight of a secret they couldn't touch. The real inheritance, the true legacy, was already safe. Across the table, William Harper's eyes flicked to mine. He didn't say a word, but the look he gave me was steady, searching, as though he understood more than he let on. I gave him the smallest nod, a silent confirmation. My parents thought they had reduced me to ashes. But I felt the reassuring weight of another envelope hidden deep inside my coat pocket. The one Henry had pressed into my hands 2 months before his death. His grip had been weak, his voice frail, but his eyes had burned with the fire of a man who built an empire from nothing. "They'll try to destroy what they can't control," he had whispered. "So I'll give them something to burn. Let them think they've won. What matters will already be safe." And so I smiled. Not because I was fearless, not because I was untouched, but because in the smoke and ashes swirling before me, I saw exactly what my grandfather had prepared me to see: their downfall. The smoke from the burned check still clung to my hair when I stepped out of the courthouse that day. But even as the bitterness lingered, my thoughts drifted to the envelope my grandfather had pressed into my hands months before he died. His grip had been frail, but his eyes had blazed with determination. "They'll try to destroy what they can't control," Henry Carter had whispered. "So I'll give them something to burn. Let them have their victory. What matters will already be safe." At the time, I had dismissed it as paranoia, the kind of warning born from years of battles over money and control. But now, after watching Robert and Sarah feed a fake check to the fire, I understood exactly what he meant. The letter he'd given me had been sealed with red wax, the Carter crest pressed deep into the surface. I had opened it the night before the will reading, my heart pounding as if I were trespassing into forbidden territory. His handwriting had been shaky but deliberate. "Chloe," it began, "if you are reading this, then I am gone. The family I once trusted will circle you like wolves. The check you'll be given is not the real gift. It is bait. They will burn it, and they will believe they've destroyed you. But the truth is already beyond their reach." I remembered the words as if I were holding the page again. "The real legacy has been secured, wired to a trust in your name, protected by those outside this family. When the fire rises, do not panic. Smile. That will be your victory." So I had smiled. The second envelope he gave me still rested in the inside pocket of my coat, thicker and heavier than the one my father had ripped apart. Inside was a small brass key, engraved with a single word. Trillium. Did he the time he hadn't explained it. He only leaned close, his voice rough with age but sharp with certainty. "One day you'll need this word more than air." That morning I finally learned why. The marble echoes of Harper and Associates were replaced by the hushed stillness of Langford Private Bank. From the outside it was ordinary. A red brick building with ivy curling up the walls, but inside it felt like a fortress. Thick carpets absorbed sound, and the air smelled faintly of cedar and ink. The clerk at the front desk scanned my ID and then softened when she pulled up my file. "Miss Carter," she said quietly, "you're here for box 12. Mr. Adams is expecting you." I found him waiting by the elevator. Mr. Adams, my grandfather's old confidant. His silver hair was neatly combed, his posture still proud. "Chloe," he greeted me with a nod. "Henry prepared this long before his passing. Follow me." We descended together into the vault. The elevator groaned under the weight of secrets. When the doors slid open, cold air brushed my face. Metal drawers lined the walls like soldiers standing at attention. Mr. Adams stopped at one. "Box 12, he said, placing a small brass key into my palm. The word Trillium glinted faintly along its side that I swallowed hard, slid the key into the lock and turned. The drawer opened with a heavy metallic sigh. Inside was a fireproof envelope sealed in red wax, a small black velvet pouch, and a thick file tied with a crimson ribbon. My hands trembled as I reached for the envelope, knowing my grandfather's true legacy was about to be revealed. The lock clicked, and the drawer slid forward with a metallic sigh. My breath caught as I looked inside. Resting neatly in the velvet-lined compartment were 3 items: a fireproof envelope sealed in deep red wax, a small black velvet pouch, and a thick file bound with a crimson ribbon. My hands trembled as I reached for the envelope first. The wax bore the Carter family crest, a stallion rearing proudly, carved by my grandfather's own hand decades ago. Breaking the seal felt like breaking into a piece of his soul. Inside lay a single sheet of paper and something heavier tucked beneath it. The letter, written in Henry Carter's looping script, read, "Chloe, if you are holding this, it means they did exactly as I predicted. They burned the false gift, believing they had ruined you. But the check inside this envelope is the real one, signed, secured, and undeniable. Still, remember this. Money is not the legacy. Look deeper. My fingers brushed the paper aside and pulled out a crisp, heavy rectangle. My eyes widened. The real check. $99 million. Thicker than normal bold ink etched across its surface, and my grandfather's signature steady and unmistakable. The weight of it sent a chill down my spine. I forced myself to breathe, to steady my shaking hands. Then I turned to the velvet pouch. Inside lay a small USB drive, cool and smooth in my palm. Without a word, Mr. Adams gestured me toward a small private booth where a laptop waited. My pulse quickened as I slid the USB into place. The screen flickered, and then my grandfather appeared. He was sitting in his old study, surrounded by shelves of leather-bound books. The dusty lamp I used to hide beneath as a child glowed faintly at his side. His voice filled the room, steady even in frailty. "If you are watching this, Chloe," he began, his eyes piercing through the screen, "then I am gone. And if I am right, they have already shown you what they are capable of. They tried to break me, and they will try to break you. But you, Chloe, you are the one I trust." I pressed my hand over my mouth, tears stinging my eyes, though my chest felt tight with something more than grief. It was strength, pride, and a storm of emotions that left me breathless. "This legacy is not about wealth," he continued. "It is about power, control, and survival. You will face them, and they will hate you for standing tall. But remember, you were never forgotten. You were chosen." The screen went dark. Silence filled the booth, but inside me a fire had been lit. My grandfather hadn't just left me money. He had left me a weapon. 2 nights later, I discovered just how quickly that weapon would be tested. When I arrived home, a sleek black BMW idled at the curb outside my apartment. Leaning against the hood, arms crossed, was Jacob. His casual pose couldn't disguise the tension etched across his jaw. "Chloe," he called, his voice smooth but strained. "We need to talk." The BMW's headlights cut through the misty dusk as I approached my apartment. Jacob leaned casually against the hood, but the tightness in his jaw betrayed his calm facade. His arms were crossed, sunglasses perched uselessly on his head, though the sun had long since set. "Chloe," he called, his tone smooth but laced with strain. "We need to talk." I almost walked right past him, but something in his voice, half demand, half plea, made me stop. "Talk?" I echoed, my bag still slung over my shoulder. "About what?" "The ashes you're still brushing off Dad's jacket." For the first time in years, I saw him flinch. He recovered quickly, smirking. "You've always had that sharp tongue. Grandpa probably thought it was charming. But let's be honest, 99 million is too much for you. You'll drown in it. Split it with us." "With me?" A bitter laugh slipped past my lips. "So this isn't about family. It's survival. For you." Jacob's eyes hardened. "Don't pretend you don't need us. Money won't protect you. Dad's furious, Mom's already talking about contesting the will. You can't fight them alone." I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "You really think I'm alone?" His smirk faltered. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means Grandpa saw through you. Through all of you. He gave me more than money. He gave me proof." The color drained from his face. His usual swagger slipped, replaced by something I rarely saw in him, fear. Proof of what? He demanded, though his voice shook. That you'd betray me the first chance you got, I said evenly. And here you are, right on cue. His facade cracked. Desperation leaked through as he raked a hand through his hair. Chloe, listen. They forced me into it. Dad said if I didn't back him, I'd be cut out completely. You know how he is. I held his gaze, unblinking. You chose your side, Jacob. Don't act like you were powerless. You smiled while they burned it. For once, Jacob had no comeback. His lips parted, but no words came. Finally, he muttered, I didn't think Grandpa would really give it all to you. And that, I shot back, is exactly why he didn't give it to you. The silence between us stretched tight. Cars hummed past. A dog barked down the block. Yet all I heard was my grandfather's voice echoing in my memory. Silence is the sharpest blade, and I turned toward my building, climbing the steps with measured calm. Chloe, Jacob called after me, his voice cracking now. If you keep pushing them, they'll destroy you. They've done it before. They'll try again. My hand hovered on the doorknob. I glanced back, my smile thin and sharp as glass. Let them try. And with that, I closed the door behind me, leaving Jacob in the mist, clutching nothing but his fading bravado. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse, my heels striking the marble floor with a rhythm steady enough to mask the storm inside me. At my side strode Sylvia Orton, my grandfather's chosen lawyer, silver hair pulled back like a battle flag. Inside, my parents sat at one table. Robert's blazer was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. Sarah's pearls gleamed defiantly against her throat, though her lips twisted into a forced smirk. Jacob sat behind them, restless, tapping his foot. They didn't look at me, but I could feel their hatred radiating across the aisle like heat. Then Judge Kinley entered, gavel striking once. We are here today regarding the estate of Henry Carter, he announced. Disputed wills have been submitted. Let us proceed. The gavel's echo faded, leaving the courtroom heavy with anticipation. Judge Kinley leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Proceed. My parents' lawyer, a slick young man with too much arrogance for his experience, sprang to his feet. Your Honor, he began confidently, the most recent legitimate will leaves the majority of the Carter estate to my clients, Robert and Sarah Carter. Any suggestion otherwise is baseless and fraudulent. The words hung in the air, rehearsed and hollow. Beside me, Sylvia Orton rose slowly, adjusting her glasses with deliberate calm. Her voice was smooth, every syllable sharpened like a blade. Your Honor, we submit into evidence a revised will executed under legal counsel, notarized and signed by Henry Carter himself 5 months after the document presented by the respondents. A ripple of whispers swept through the courtroom. Robert shot to his feet, his face red with fury. Lies. This is a setup. Order. Judge Kinley barked, slamming his gavel once. Sit down, Mr. Carter. But Sylvia wasn't finished. With a swift motion, she tapped her tablet, and the courtroom screen flickered to life. There he was, my grandfather, Henry Carter, frail in his hospice bed but still unmistakably strong in presence. His voice, though softer, was clear. If you are watching this, he said, his eyes staring directly into the camera, then it means what I feared has come to pass. Robert and Sarah pressured me into signing a will I did not want. I corrected it. My true heir is my granddaughter, Chloe Carter. No coercion. No doubt. This was my choice. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother, Sarah, clutched at her pearls, her lips trembling. A strangled gasp escaped her throat. Jacob buried his face in his hands. His cocky posture dissolved into shame. Sylvia's voice rang out, steady as steel. Additionally, Your Honor, we have correspondence proving Robert and Sarah repeatedly pressured Henry Carter to stick to the script. We also present testimony from Mr. Adams of Langford Private Bank, who safeguarded the trust at Henry Carter's request. Gasps echoed again. All around me, I felt eyes shift toward my parents, the weight of judgment already bearing down. Judge Kinley's expression hardened. I've seen greed. I've seen cruelty. Rarely have I seen both displayed so boldly. He cleared his throat. Miss Chloe Carter is hereby affirmed as the sole heir. The estate shall be transferred accordingly. Robert shot up once more, his voice breaking into a roar. This isn't over. Sit down, Robert, Judge Kinley thundered. In addition, I am ordering a freeze on your assets pending investigation into elder coercion and document tampering. The gavel struck one last time, loud and final. Court is adjourned. I rose to my feet, my spine straight, my breath steady. Across the aisle, Robert's face was pale with rage, Sarah's eyes glassy with disbelief, Jacob's head hung low. For once, I wasn't the one diminished beneath their gaze this time. They were the ones shrinking, their power stripped bare in front of everyone. As I stepped toward the courthouse doors, the storm of reporters outside grew louder, their voices merging into a wall of questions. Microphones flashed like weapons, demanding answers. Chloe, how do you respond to your parents' accusations? Chloe, do you have a statement? I paused at the top of the courthouse steps, the weight of the gavel still echoing in my ears. The judgment ink wasn't even dry, but everything had already changed. They already said everything, I answered calmly, my voice carrying over the crowd. When they set fire to the only love that ever saw me. I have nothing else to add. The courthouse steps stretched before me like the beginning of a new life. Reporters swarmed the entrance, microphones flashing, their voices rising in a chaotic chorus. Chloe, do you feel vindicated? Chloe, what will you do with $99 million? Chloe, how do you respond to your parents' accusations? Their questions blurred together, but I didn't falter. My heels clicked sharply against the stone as I paused just long enough to look out at the sea of cameras. They already said everything, I replied evenly. When they set fire to the only love that ever saw me. I have nothing else to add. I turned and walked on, ignoring the frantic shouts that followed. Behind me, I caught a glimpse of them, Robert shouting into his phone, desperate and wild. Sarah's pearls hung crooked against her throat, her face pale as paper. Jacob trailed after them silently, his head bowed, all swagger gone. For the first time, none of them looked powerful. They looked small. That night, back in my apartment, the city lights flickered through the window. I set my bag down and carefully pulled out the items that now meant more than anything else. The scarf my grandfather had given me when I was 10, the sealed documents, the real check, and the USB drive holding his final message. That I tucked the check and the flash drive into the safe at the back of my closet, wrapped securely in the old scarf that still smelled faintly of cedar. The lock clicked shut, sealing them away. That I poured myself a cup of tea, though it went cold untouched. For years I had been erased, pushed aside, silenced. But tonight the silence was mine. It was no longer empty. It was earned. Sitting at my desk, I let my thoughts wander to my grandfather's words. Silence is the sharpest blade. He had prepared me for this moment, not just with money, but with something far greater, resilience. He knew they would try to break me. Instead, they revealed who I truly was. On the streets below, the city pulsed with life. Horns honked, strangers laughed. The rhythm of survival never stopped. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged in that rhythm. No longer shackled to the ashes of my family's bitterness. I wasn't just Henry Carter's granddaughter. I wasn't just Robert and Sarah's daughter. I wasn't just Jacob's sister. I was Chloe Carter, the woman who walked through fire and came out forged. As midnight deepened, I allowed myself one last smile. My parents thought they had destroyed me, but all they had done was prove my grandfather right. The fire hadn't ended me. It had revealed me. And from the ashes, I was finally free. Thank you for following this story till the end. If you found this an emotional journey of betrayal, justice, and inner strength, please help Revenge Amy reach its first 1,000 subscribers. Just a like and subscribe. Your support will be a great motivation for us to continue bringing more inspiring stories. Click subscribe today and be a part of this journey. See you in the next stories.